So you see that I'm at Chick-fil-A, my daughter's favorite place. This is the usual drive-in menu. And some folks, when they go to the drive-in menu, know what they want. They're ready to order. Some people look at all these choices and they just go blank. I mean, think about it. Look how many things you can get just at a Chick-fil-A, and it's just chicken. So some of you, when you get the menu or the drive-in, you just freeze. Luckily, we come enough that I know what I want. But if it were a new restaurant, it can be confusing. Choices. We've all got to make them, from little to small. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're a church at Randolph, and we're constantly having to choose. We may not always realize we're trying to choose. We decide which maybe Bible study to have. The worship team may be deciding which direction to go in worship. Susie's looking at music, what kind of music to use at Easter or at Christmas. I might be looking at a sermon series. We're all making choices all the time. Do we need to help a family? Is it time to launch a new ministry? Does this person need our assistance? Does the youth group need to go in this camp or that camp? All kinds of decisions are made on just a regular basis as a church, as any organization or body makes choices. And some of them are little choices. Do we have fried chicken or baked chicken at the Cheerful Hearts? Some of them are really serious. Do we vote to spend the money to remodel the sanctuary or renovate the front entrance like we did? And they have bigger implications. But what I really want to talk about in this series, though, is to take you into the heart of what it means to be Randolph Memorial. 13 years ago, I came to this church to be the pastor. It was me, Katie, Rachel, and a dog named Allie. And I told you this in the little promo the other day. And back then I was trying to figure out what sermon should I give to begin my ministry here at Randolph, 13 years ago, this fall. And the first series I did was choosing what kind of church we wanted to be. And I'd read this book right before I moved here by Paul Nixon called I Refuse to Lead a Dying Church. Now, I don't believe Randolph is a dying church. It wasn't then, it's not now. But I wanted to know what makes a church healthy. And so I did a sermon series on it. Well, you fast forward to today, and as we were going through this time period, we finished the parables, I was thinking, what do I need to do next? I listed a whole bunch of ideas of Bible studies we could do. And you voted on Church After COVID, which was just a new title for that sermon series I did 13 years ago. So I pulled out my notes and I took those sermons and I turned them into a Bible study. Because the choices I talked about then are still good choices to make today, if not even more relevant. They're very basic, they're not rocket science, but they help us reframe what it means to be a church. Okay, what it basically is asking is what kind of church do we want to be? I'm a big planner of the future. I'm always planning our next trip, our next whatever as a family, and I believe that we're made to dream, that we're made to plan, we're made to prepare, we're made to think about what's next. Because if you don't, and you just keep doing what you've always done, the world changes even if we refuse to. And as the world changes and we don't, then we're like a square block in a circle, and we don't fit. We've got to make sure that what we're doing fits with what's going on around us. Well, I'm going about my business like you. I'm doing just what you normally do. And then they start talking about this virus from China. And they start talking about China's having problems. They start talking about cruise ships here. So like you over the last 5 or 6 weeks, I've been just dreaming about what it's going to be like after COVID. Now, I know it's still with us. I know that we're going to have to live with COVID even when we start back in our physical part of being, when we come back to worship. That's going to look different. The things we're going to do is going to seem different. It's not going to be the way it's been before, but we'll make it. We'll continue to do it. You guys have been amazing, flexible, and adaptive during all this. The bottom line, when we do come back, and eventually there'll be a vaccine, we know that, and eventually things will get, I guess, normal. But just like with 9/11, World War II, any other great change in history, the church has had to adapt because the culture does a shift. Things change. During this COVID time, we've used technology in our church more than we ever have. We've thought about what it means to be a church more than we have in a long time. Our schedules have forced us to have a rethought about our priorities and just all kinds of stuff. So I want to take all that and I want to say, okay, I've been here 13 years. Lord willing and the creek don't rise. Let's say, what's the next 13 going to be like? What's the next year going to be like? What's the next 6 months going to be like? What kind of church do we want to be in 2021? That's what I'm saying. How do we want to look at the future, adapt, and be ready to minister and share the love of God to the world around us? Because that's our mission. Our mission statement hasn't changed. Love God and love your neighbor. Share the good news of Jesus Christ to the world. That's not changed. But how we do it and what we do to get that message out, there will be changes. So today, I want to talk about it. I want to talk about the first choice. Each week is a different choice. Choice number 1 today, choose life or choose death. That sounds stark, but basically the first choice is choose positive or negative. Choose yes or no. Choose life or death. And if a church chooses death, well, then it just decides to say, you know, we don't like what's coming. We don't like how the world's changed, so we're going to close down the doors in 6 to 12 months, and we're going to give our building to missions, and we turn the lights out, turn in the keys. I'm not going to do that, and I know you're not. Randolph Memorial is not ready for the rocking chair. So I hope you're going to choose life. This first choice has to be made so that each week I talk about the next choices. If we stop here, it's over. But we're going to choose life. As your pastor, we're going to choose life. So I want to talk about what that means and how it looks. And then after we choose life, each week we'll be talking about what that's going to be. What are the choices? The positive, encouraging choices rather than the negative. Okay, so choose life. You say, well, Derek, that's kind of dumb. Who's going to choose death? There are people who are pessimistic. There are people who say, no, it won't work, can't happen, we never did it. When my daughter was a little girl, real little, she used to have a Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh. It was a little toy, and it was a toy phone. And you could push the button, and you might get a phone call from Winnie, you might get one from Rabbit. But if Eeyore answered, he would always give the negative. He would always say stuff like, it'll probably rain, no one's going to invite me to the party. And that's what he did. Whereas Rabbit couldn't wait to get there, and Winnie couldn't, Eeyore, it was always bad. We're not going to be Eeyore. All right, so let's read our scripture for the day. Matthew chapter 7, verses 24 through 27. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rains came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house. Yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against the house, and it fell with a great crash. The Sermon on the Mount, as I said, is about choosing life over death. Jesus lays it on the line and shows us what the Christian life is all about. He reminds us that we're to be the light and to shine to the world. We're to make the world a better place. If you read the Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7, you'll see where Jesus talks about murder, adultery, marriage, oaths, revenge, and daily conduct. His goal in all this sermon is to show us that daily, we have to choose right over wrong. We have to choose godly over what is not. We must choose life over death, he's stressing, on a daily basis. Life represents what's good, what's positive, what works. Death represents what ends, what doesn't work, what is a dead end. And so that's what I'm talking about. Not necessarily the literal death, not even the literal closing of a church. Because here's the truth. A church could not choose life and go on for a long time just going through the motions. Jesus, though, wants us to choose life. Once he even said he wanted us all to have the life that was abundant, the life that just overflows, that is just full of surplus. Okay, so then he comes to this parable that I read to you. He describes two men, and each has a choice, life or death. One chooses life, the other chooses death. What happens is a storm is coming. Notice that, a storm is coming. And the storm is for both. You can't help it. Storms come for good and bad people. They just come. No matter what you do, tough times come. God's people are going to have struggles. The wise man, what he does is he builds a house and it withstands the storm because he chose life. He chose victory. He built his house on the right foundation that could handle the storm. The second man chose death. He was foolish. He chose defeat. He built his house on sand. It was easier, faster, quicker, probably cheaper. He wasn't listening to common sense. He didn't think it through. Whatever the reason, he made a bad choice. The winds and the storms came, and the house fell. This is a powerful story. It's a great parable. I actually love it. And I did the parables, and you're like, Derek, you're doing another parable. That's true, but every scripture I'm choosing for this study is not a parable. But yeah, we're back at parables. But anyway, this one shows us exactly what it's all about of making right choices. It's an interesting passage in many ways because it really works. It really illustrates to us and challenges us that yes, the bad's happening, but what are you going to do about it? This virus, COVID, or the tornado that hit our community, or 9/11, or wars, or struggles, these things happen and we could spend all our lives going crazy trying to figure out why. Or we can instead say, what now? What will we do about this? How will we allow it to shape us? What opportunities of growth can come from this? The Bible is full of choices of life and death, and basically it's God or not. In Hebrew Scriptures, the Old Testament, God's people seem to have the choice to make it all the time. They're constantly having to make that choice. They're reminded time and time again that if they choose God, they will live, but if they don't, they'll find destruction. You find it all over the Old Testament. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, we find Moses reminding the people of the choice of death and life. Go look at it, Deuteronomy 30. He reminds the people that they have life or death before them, but it's up to them. If they follow false gods, he lets them know they reject life. Joshua, I love the story in Joshua, the book of Joshua, where Joshua offers that same choice, and he declares, quote, "But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord." That's chapter 24, verse 15. As for me and my household, we're going to serve the Lord. Joshua's saying, for me and my household, we're choosing life. Tonight, I want us to begin this journey of choices, this journey of church. And I want us to covenant. I want us to pray. I want us to seek to build our house on the right foundation. Randolph Memorial has been built on a strong foundation historically. We know the people who have come before, who have sweated blood and tears to create a church in Amherst County to make a difference. They chose life for this church. And each generation has handed it over to the next, and it's our turn. We have to choose, and we have to choose right. And I hope you will with me. The Sermon on the Mount, when you read it, it is not easy, but it is the path to lead a disciplined and productive and healthy and godly life. If we don't follow God, if we refuse like the foolish man, well, we're in trouble. It's interesting. There's a word in the New Testament for when people change their minds about sin, when they repent, which literally means you're moving in one direction and you're reversing course. Okay, so we're going to choose. And individually we need to make this choice. So collectively as a church we can. Each of us to choose. I'm going to give my best in following God at Randolph. I'm going to give my time, my talent, my treasures. I'm going to give my all. And I'm going to work together to build the unity and the strength we need to be who God wants us to be. There's a preacher in the Midwest who talks about a young couple in his church who boasted to all their friends and neighbors that they were flying to New York City, big New York City. They were going to be able to spend one day there, only had one day. But the highlight of their trip was going to go see the Broadway play, My Fair Lady. They were so proud of this, and everyone was really impressed because no one in that small town had ever been to a play on Broadway. The day came, and when they arrived in New York, they took a taxi to the theater to see My Fair Lady. To their dismay, they found that the play was sold out for the night. They didn't buy tickets ahead of time. They thought, what do we do now? Everyone knows that we came to see My Fair Lady. We don't dare tell them that we didn't go. So they found a couple of ticket stubs on the sidewalk, and they picked them up. They bought a program that described the acts of the play. They went home singing, I Could Have Danced All Night, and they told everyone they'd gone to see My Fair Lady. They had the tickets, they knew the plot, and they knew the song. But they didn't really go. The preacher said, that's right, they had all that. But they didn't see the performance. And there's a big difference in that. He added, a lot of Christians are like that. We come to church, we have the bulletin, we know the songs, we know what to say and what to do. The problem is that many of us have never really made Jesus the Lord of our lives. I guess the reason many Christians feel defeated and many churches are depressed is the same way. They go through the motion. They got a constitution of bylaws, they got pews, they got carpet, they got programs and committees. But they haven't really chosen to get that abundant life, to really live into the richness that God wants to give them. When we allow God to be God and us not, when we decide to let God guide us and not just our opinions, when we begin to really choose what's best, and when we really choose the joy and the love and the laughter that God brings, when we really choose that abundant life, all bets are off. So I guess it comes to this, Randolph Memorial, what kind of church do we want to be? Let's today, this week in this study, let's say we're going to choose life. We are going to be the church God needs us to be in the 21st century, right? We're going to choose that. And then each week we're going to look at what that means, what it means to be alive, what it means to thrive, not survive. When the crisis hit and people were like, oh my goodness, what are churches going to do? How are they going to pay their bills? How are they going to minister to the people? How are they going to survive? I decided right there on day one, nope, not going to talk about surviving. We're going to talk about thriving. What are we going to do to thrive, to be God's people? To not just get out through this, but to get through this better than we ever were, to be stronger and healthier and ready for the work God has. I'm excited about it. Okay, Randolph Memorial, I want to take that parable of the solid foundation and the shaky foundation, and I want to explore what that really has to say in more practical terms. In that story, the foundation's what mattered. what they needed was they needed the person to make sure that when the storms come, the challenges come, that it's got a good foundation, a good standing, or you saw that it would fall. If it was weak, it falls. And so we know, of course, the biblical answer is Jesus is the foundation. We got that. And I agree. That's what it's about. But how Jesus is the foundation, how we allow Jesus to be foundation, that's the challenge. So I'm sitting in my office. I've got back from my road trip. I'm in my office. And sitting here in my office, I think about how long I've been in this office. Over a dozen years, writing sermons at this desk, preparing Bible lessons, talking to people in the church. I mean, it's hard to believe, but sure enough, that's a lot of time. And I think back to those first few days that I came in here and sat in this office and got all my books set up and wrote my first messages and dealt with the material that I'm now revisiting. And as I think about it now, this far down the road, I'm proud of this church. But what I want to do is, as we launch into the end of 2020, the beginning of 2021, as we think to the future, when we begin to start, even if we get back this, sooner than later, that's not the point. The point is, as we come back and as we work through this challenge and we go into the next phase of what it means to be church, as we continue through the year and into the next, this has been a time for me as your pastor to really think about that, to reflect and think, as we do this, I want to be strong. I want to be ready for whatever comes next. And I think I would have done that, and you would have done that too, but this has caused us to have the time to reflect on that. It's caused us to see how technology could really help us as we go into the future. It's caused us to know that we've missed our church and to appreciate it, right? So anyway, revisiting that book, I Refuse to Lead a Dying Church, I wanted to share a couple of thoughts from that book as we think about the text I just studied with you, and that's this. As we look to be the church that the future needs, because the future is now, the healthy church will be one that tends primarily to what is living, not what is passing away. And let me put it to you this way. I served a church once that had a VCR ministry. Now, your kids, if you're watching this, you'll have to look it up. But they had this big booth they created with a camera, and they were taping on VHS. And they would take the tapes to church members' houses. It was cutting edge. I didn't know any other church at the time doing it. It was perfect. It was wonderful. It was needed because people couldn't always come. This was a way to meet the need, and the deacons would drop off the VCR tapes. Perfect. Now, I don't know what that church is doing today, but I bet they're not doing that. They probably moved on to DVDs, and they're probably streaming online like we're now going to be doing. We're going to start streaming our worship services when we get back. But they would be silly if today they were still dropping off VCR tapes, because most of the people would be like, what's this? I don't have a VCR. It would be impractical. But what if they insisted, no, we've spent too much money to build this ministry. We've put people in place of doing it. We love the pastor that started. We're not going to stop this. What if they did that? Well, we'd say that's crazy. And it would be. We have to constantly be matching the need. A church that is thriving has to reframe what's out there. Think about the actual reality and meet those needs. One more thing I want to talk about before we close, real quick, is this. That as we do this, we have to do a couple of things, several things that make sure that we're paying attention to the reality of our day and making some changes. Whatever ministries we launch, whatever we do, here are some thoughts. We need to continue to do pastoral care. I absolutely love doing pastoral care. But we can't just do that. We also have to focus on outreach, reaching new people, really being serious. I believe technology will do that. Not alone. It still takes personal contact, invitations, but I think now that we see the need of technology, wouldn't it be great to say to someone, I want to tell you about my church, but even more, go to this YouTube channel and watch our latest Bible study series. Watch our sermons online. Check us out and come see us. They're going to come. They're not going to just be satisfied with technology because everybody wants relationships. But it can be a doorway and a supplement. And for people who are shut in and homebound and people traveling on the road, maybe someone says, I can only be in town once a month. I travel with my job, so I find it hard to really get involved in church. You could say, well, guess what? We have a Zoom Bible study. Or, hey, guess what? Come to worship when you're in town, but when you're not, you can catch it on the computer. That's just one example. Another thing is we need to build bridges into the community. And I think, Randolph, that's why you've been strong. You have been consistent about building bridges, and I'm proud of you. You're always looking, whether it's Christmas or during the year, what are the needs, Christmas boxes, ringing bells, fixing handicap ramps. You know that it's all about building bridges into the community, but we need to do that. And then finally, we've got to develop leadership. I'm serious. I love our leaders, and I don't want to replace them, and I don't want you to quit. but we have to always be bringing on new people and even younger people into leadership roles, training them, preparing them, discipling them, because none of us live forever, and we need new ideas, and new people bring new ideas. We don't need to get rid of the people that are doing it. We need the experience and the wisdom of those who have been there, but we need to bring in the innovation of people who just can see it with fresh eyes, and also continuing to pass the baton on. I know in the stewardship committee, I'm proud of Scott. Scott, if you're watching this, I'm proud of you. It's good to see a young man being on that team with us. I'm excited whenever new members came into our church and have been involved in choir and deacons and on it goes. Thank God that God is still bringing people to us to serve. So again, those are just some examples as we think about this study, as we continue to discuss each week, making a choice. That choosing life means we make smart choices about what life is about. It's historic, it's the main street. When I first moved here, there wasn't a lot here to do. You didn't come down here. Just wasn't a lot to do. Some businesses, a couple of restaurants, but you and I all know what they're doing. They saw something that once was vibrant. Many of you remember when the movie theaters were down here, people walked the streets, it was busy, it was the commercial hub of Lynchburg. And then as retail went outside of the street, declined, this area became a ghost town. Just a few businesses. But then somebody had a dream. Let's not let it die. Let's bring life back. The academy down here, 25 million plus, they brought it back. They began to bring in restaurants. And now the infrastructure is being done to put lights in the street. And so through all this work, Main Street is becoming a main street again, becoming alive, a hub. Now right now it looks like a war zone, but boy, they've got a vision. You see it everywhere. You know they want to bring more and more life back. And I predict in a couple of years, this is my prediction, in a couple of years I think this is going to be bustling. I think this is going to be a hot spot to come to eat and to have entertainment for businesses. But it wouldn't happen if people didn't have a dream to come alive and to choose life, not death. And I can remember when people started talking about downtown and putting money into it. I can remember some people saying, that won't work. People aren't going to go there. People aren't going to do that. You just watch. If you have the dream, if you have the belief, and you put the energy and time and effort into it, and you've chosen life, it'll happen. So church, RMBC, we're going to choose life. We're going to choose it, and we're going to choose it well. Let's close in prayer. Gracious God, as I'm standing here in the heart of this little city, I pray that our church will think and pray and seek how we too can choose life, choose energy, choose a future, because you have that for us if we have the courage to take it. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Spirit we pray, and all God's people say, Amen.